There are quite a number of new effects that CSS3 provides us access to. We have the ability to set up backgrounds in multiple such usages. There's border color, opacity, resize, text shadow, word wrap, box shadow. Oh, the list is really, really lengthy. Let us take a look at some prominent ones and usages which would be of importance to us, something that we may be preferring to use or a need that we see would arise possibly sooner or later. To start with, let's take a look at a property called opacity. Just a little bit of a heads up here. Opacity is a property which we previously had supported by a couple of browsers. It was not a part of the CSS standard per se, hence not every browser supported it. Now, with the introduction of CSS3, opacity happens to be a part of the CSS standard itself. Okay, now what is this? Opacity is a property here which talks about how opaque something can be. Its value here ranges between 0 and 1. Opacity 0 would mean the block in question is completely transparent. Opacity 1, the block in question is completely opaque. Let me say that again. Opacity, this is something a property rather, whose value ranges between 0 and 1. Opacity 0 would mean the block in question is completely transparent. And opacity 1 would mean the block in question is completely opaque. All right. Now, on the screen, notice I have two divs. Both of them have the same value for the background color. Notice that both of them have the same value for the background color. For the first div, the opacity has been set to 1. And for the second, the opacity has been set to 0.5. So if you look at the divs per se, without looking at the way we've gone about getting this to work, you probably feel, oh, these are two boxes and we have employed two different colors. Apparently not. The colors in both the cases is exactly the same. It's just that one is completely opaque and the other is semi-transparent. Now, this would mean if there was something beneath the second div, the one which is pinkish, it's kind of semi-transparent. So if there was something beneath that div, behind the div that is, that content would be visible because the div is semi-transparent. All right? It is not 100% opaque, it is semi-transparent. Opacity set to 0.5. Now, this brings up another interesting question. In CSS, I believe all of us are familiar with a property called Z-index. Have we heard of it? Z-index.
Yes.
Any idea what it does?
So like I can assign some numbers, so it can like take something above something else. Like if someone's Z index is higher than the other, so the higher one will appear above the lower one, something like that.
Indeed, Suman. The Z-index is a property which would help you specify the order of the elements in case there is an overlay. So it's on the basis of the Z-axis, if I may use the word. In case there is an overlay, or if two blocks are overlapping and you want to set the ordering, which one should be on the top, which should be in, which should be behind, bring to front, send to back, kind of a thing, you could use the Z-index. And as Suman rightly pointed out, the box which has a higher value for the Z-index will appear in the foreground, and the one with a lower value will be pushed to the background. So you can set the Z order, so to speak. Here is a quick statement, and I would like you to please think and make sure this is something all of you understand. With the introduction of this property called opacity, I may now no longer need to use the Z-index. Let me repeat the statement again. Please make sure you give it a thought. With the introduction of this property called opacity, I may now no longer be compelled to use the Z index. Please let me know if it did not make sense. I certainly can repeat it.
So you are just saying, are you asking?
No, that is a statement, Umashankar, no
It's a
questions.
statement.
All I'm asking is, I mean, just want to make sure that everyone understood what that statement meant.
Yeah, yeah, understood.
All right.
So just a question.
Yes,
Uh,
Umashankar.
so it again depends upon the kind of element we are trying to overlap or place. So in some cases, uh, will opacity will always work?
It may, which is why I said it. I may not be compelled to use the Z index. So it's not the
Okay,
case that
okay.
opacity will always work. I'll give you one example where it will not. Imagine that I bring something in the foreground. There is this div in the foreground, and behind this div, there is a form with a text field. I would not be able to select or click into that text box and type something in because it is in the background. Though I see the text box, I cannot interact with it. Now, in that case, in that kind of a scenario, it becomes necessary that the form is always in the foreground. Opacity will not help.
Right.
All right. So, which is why I said there could be cases where I may not be compelled to use the Z index. All right. We've used colors. Okay, just a quick question, maybe a GK question, I guess. In this example, I have chosen to use a hexadecimal notation for choosing colors. What would all Fs be? GK question.
White.
White. Okay. And therefore all zeros?
Black.
Black. Indeed. Thankfully, there are only two possibilities. So I guess the scope for error is rather limited. Just kidding. Well, it is a well-known and a documented fact that not everyone is going to be extremely happy when working with colors using the hexadecimal notation, because there are people who prefer using the RGB kind of a syntax instead. Not a lot of people are going to be very happy using hexadecimal, because what if somebody says, oh, I want to have light pink, what color, what kind of a combination is that? You got to be looking at a code table and get that information. But a lot of people prefer using an RGB instead. We had in CSS, we previously had a function called RGB. All right. Previously, I repeat, in CSS, we had a function called RGB. CSS3 introduces a new function called RGBA. The A represents alpha, alpha as in opacity. I'll say that again. A as in alpha, alpha as in opacity. So the value here is going to range between 0 and 1. Behavior exactly similar, just that the notation I'm using is going to be different. RGBA as opposed to a property called opacity. And finally, a lot of people who fall into the category of designers would prefer using HSL. Just a question out of my curiosity. Have we used HSL in CSS? Any of us?
No.
No.
No. Okay. This is extremely popular with graphic designers. They use and they prefer employing this HSL kind of a terminology. HSL is an acronym that stands for hue. Hue is a value on a color wheel ranging between 0 and 360. Saturation, it's a percentage, indicates how vivid the color should be. And L there represents lightness, which again happens to be a percentage. Now, vividity of the color is going to basically be like saying, oh, should it really pop out, or is it okay? And I mean, lightness You increase it beyond a particular threshold, the image is going to appear washed out. So that's more to do with the setting. HSL is a method we previously have had access to in CSS. In CSS3, we are seeing the introduction of a new method called HSLA. The A there representing alpha. Alpha as in opacity. So the value again ranging between 0 and 1. An important point that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention. All the three usages that we have seen here, be it opacity, RGBA or HSLA, all of them, what they're trying to achieve is more or less consistent. All right, they're trying to achieve the same objective, but the approach is where the differences would lie. So for those of us who are happy with opacity with the hexadecimal notation, we could prefer choosing the first approach. For somebody who is acquainted with the RGB kind of a syntactical usage, they could use RGBA. And designers, generally speaking, because they are known to prefer HSL, they might be at home when they choose to use HSLA. The outcome in all the three cases is pretty much consistent. The approach is where the differences would lie. Moving on. We previously could set up borders for fields. I mean, borders for elements, absolutely nothing new about it. We could set up borders. But what's interesting is this property called border radius, which CSS3 standardizes. I'll repeat that again. We now have a property called border radius. We previously had this supported by a few browsers. Apparently, not every browser would accept a value. So you might have encountered browsers that might not have supported it. And another valid reason is this was not a part of the CSS standard. So the browser would certainly not be compelled to support it. Now, though, border radius is a part of the CSS standard. In this example, as you can observe, I have a div. The div is associated with a border. Interestingly, notice those rounded edges, those curved edges. That is thanks to this property called border radius. And it keeps getting better. Here's a new property called box shadow. Box shadow. That view that you're seeing on the slide, that's a div, by the way. For the div, we have been able to set up a shadow that's being cast. And the moment you look at it, it kind of gives a bevel effect, or some people prefer terming it as a 3D kind of an impact. Now, trust me, if this was a requirement in the past, without a second thought, most often than not, we would have ended up creating an image. This would have been an image. That's no longer necessary, thankfully, because CSS introduces this property called box shadow. And let me walk you through what those values are. Box shadow, horizontal offset. That's the first value there. Horizontal offset, as in the offset on the x-axis. Vertical offset, that's the second value, y-axis. We then have the third value representing the blur radius, the amount of blur that you would want to set up. To give you a little bit of a background, blur radius in particular, this is based on physics. If an object is very close to the surface where the shadow is appearing or the shadow is being cast, then the shadow will be very sharp. As that object moves further from the surface towards the source of light, the shadow starts getting blurred. So the amount of blur that you want to generate, the blur radius, that's something that you could set up in that third value. And finally, the shadow color. What color would you want the shadow to appear in? So that's a value we could set up. Box shadow, horizontal offset, vertical offset, blur radius, and we've got the shadow color. Now, in this case, I am assuming that the source of light is a little above, which is why the shadow is being cast downwards. Okay. Could all of you please open CSS05 in a code editor on your machines? CSS05, please open this in a code editor. Okay, here's what we're looking at. We've set the box shadow, as you can observe. This is the horizontal offset, the first value, vertical offset, the blur radius, and the shadow color. So should we look at this in the browser, would urge all of you to please open this page in the web browser. Notice we have a div with that shadow as illustrated. So here I'm assuming that the source of light is above, which is why the shadow is being cast downwards. Now let's for a moment say the source of light moves downwards. What do you expect to happen to the shadow in such a case? If the source of light moves downwards, what do you expect should happen to the shadow?
One question is here.
Yes, Vinod?
Sir, what do you mean by offset?
Offset would mean this. Now, I hope the screen is visible. Is the browser window visible?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is, I hope you can see the cursor right now. Can you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is the border of the div. Okay. This is where the div actually ends.
Sorry, browser window is not visible.
Not visible. Let me share it. Just a moment. Okay. I'll share it, refreshed it. Is it visible now?
Yes.
Okay. This is where the div ends. The border of the div. Is the cursor visible?
Yes.
Okay. From this point to where the shadow of the div ends. Now, this is an offset.
Okay.
Now, if the div shadow was exactly behind the div, you wouldn't really be able to see it, isn't it?
Right.
So I have set up an offset so it's visible. And here I've also set up a vertical offset. You see, it's a little further down than where the div ends. I mean, there's also an offset on the y-axis. So the assumption is that the source of light is above, which is why the shadow is being cast downwards. Now, let us suppose for a moment that the source of light moves down. What do you expect should happen to the shadow? If the source of light moves down, what do you expect to happen to the shadow?
Move up.
The shadow should move up, because here my assumption is, let's suppose the light is here. I mean, I know this may sound absurd, but this highlighted text, let us assume that the light is here, which is why the shadow is being cast down. Now, if this moves down, obviously the shadow should move up. If the direction or the source of light moves downwards, the shadow should move up. Could all of you please make an attempt, edit this file such that we see the shadow on the top? Please take a minute. I'd like you to try editing this file to see that desired impact. Is that done?
Vertical offset can be made to -10.
Exactly. -10 would be in which case, Ravi? Ravindra? -10 would be which value?
The vertical one. The
The
second one.
vertical one. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, just for the benefit of everyone, all you would need to do is just set this to -10. Horizontal offset, let's suppose for now remains the same. The vertical offset is just what I change. And thanks to this change of the vertical offset, now notice what's happened to the shadow. The shadow is moved up. Okay, I'd like to bring a very interesting point here, which would be what we have altered is a CSS property. I would request everyone to please make sure you are able to visualize what I'm trying to describe here. So please pay attention. What we have currently altered is a CSS property. I hope everyone acknowledges, appreciates that a property, a CSS property's value can be dynamically altered in JavaScript. Would you agree? The value of a CSS property can be altered using JavaScript. Are we all in sync with that?
Yes.
Excellent. So imagine I write a little bit of JavaScript code. It would not be complex. I mean, I don't want any of you to do that right now. I'm just trying to help you visualize. Imagine that I write a little bit of JavaScript code wherein I am trying to alter the value of that CSS property called box shadow. And I'm trying to change the value of the vertical offset from 10 to -10 in increments, or rather decrements of 1. So it is 10px, I make it 9, then I make it 8. I'm doing it in decrements of 1, and I write some JavaScript. I could do something like a set interval and do this. I mean, I'm sure every one of us can relate to what I'm trying to describe. If I do this, eventually I want it to be -10. So I start with +10. I want to decrement it by 1 unit. From 10, it becomes 9, 8, 7, goes on, 0, -1, right up to -10. I want to do this, and the interval is going to be 1 second, let us say. Every 1 second, I want this to be decremented by 1. If I do that, it would mean that the shadow for this div would slowly move from the bottom to the top. Is everyone able to visualize this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If we are successful in doing this, and an end user looks at this implementation on the screen, just imagine the shadow moving from the bottom to the top. The impression that it gives is that the div itself is moving. Now, obviously, the shadow can't move. Only if the div moves will the shadow move. So the impression that it gives is that the div itself is moving. And this mechanism is something that a lot of developers, what I just now described to you, is a mechanism which a lot of developers are using to build something called a sprite. I'm not too sure if everyone has heard about this term called a sprite. It's used extensively in animation and gaming and all of that. This is a very simple yet an important and an interesting feature that a lot of developers are leveraging in various kinds of implementations. In this example, it's for just a div with no content, but just imagine that div had a content. The shadow could have been, made a little more emphatic and all of that. I'm just trying to help you visualize the way we could put this to work. Okay, so this is in the context of a property called box shadow, apparently one of the new features that has been introduced in CSS version 3. Well, the legitimate question that may arise is, if I can have a shadow for a box, why not for a piece of text? And that's precisely where we are. There's another property called text shadow. The name of the property is what changes. I repeat, the property is called text shadow. Horizontal offset, vertical offset, blur radius, and we have the shadow color. Could all of you please open CSS 06 in a code editor? I mean, given the fact that we've taken a look at the box shadow, I guess this is self-descriptive. CSS 06, I'd like all of you to please open this in a code editor first. This is what I believe, excuse me, we're going to be looking at. It says text shadow for this paragraph, horizontal offset, vertical offset, blur radius, and we've got the shadow color. Should we look this up in the browser, the outcome, I believe, is going to be just as expected. And trust me, this is going to really look interesting. Text shadow. Now, I have set a blur radius to 8px. In case we set it to 4px, I mean, just for the sake of argument, I set it to 4px. Notice what happens in the browser. I've set the shadow to 4px, so it's a little more sharper. I hope that's visible. I changed the blur radius from 8px to 4px, and I hope everyone's able to see the browser view. And you see that the shadows are certainly a lot more sharper. If I decrease that further, maybe let's imagine I make it 2px, you're going to notice that it gets even sharper. Notice the shadow, it's getting sharper. That's the blur radius that I'm attempting to manipulate. So I set it to 4. It kind of blurs a little. I set it to a larger value. It kind of gets blurred all the more. That's the blur radius that we are referring to. Text shadow, again, that's the name of the property. Horizontal offset, vertical offset, blur radius, and we're looking at the shadow color. Okay, these are new properties that we have gained access to in CSS version 3. So quite a bit that we have delved into so far. We have seen, I mean, if I may just quickly consolidate, I guess we kind of hitting our timeline. So I'll just take about a minute or two to quickly consolidate on all that we have discussed so far. We started out by looking at some of the HTML5 oriented characteristics. We talked about principles, 3 sets of principles that HTML5 apparently is based on, which would revolve around interoperability, utility, and compatibility. We've talked about usages in each of those. We then have looked into new elements that have been introduced as a part of HTML5, structural elements. We've talked about quite a number of deprecations. We took a look at the fact that we would now want to move formatting predominantly into CSS. Anything to do with formatting CSS is a good location where we would get to handle that. Let HTML focus more on the structure and the semantics, so to speak. That's something we have delved into. Post which we've looked into CSS and enhancements that CSS3 in particular provides us access to. We've taken a look at a few of them, which would revolve around the usage of colors. We've taken a look at some new pseudo clauses. We've talked about the concept of filters. And this was more about the way we could put forth shadows for either blocks themselves or textual content. Now, in particular, the last 2 usages, the shadows, let me again reiterate that previously, if we needed something like this, we would have predominantly looked at employing images. So if I needed to change the position of the shadow, I would have ended up creating a new image instead. Thankfully, with the help of CSS, I now am looking at employing just a property, altering the value of that property, as opposed to creating a new image itself. So it's certainly making things much more easier, convenient. And as I just now described, you get to have the liberty of manipulating these values using scripting. So it certainly is going to make our page a lot more, fluid and I certainly can vouch for the fact that it could be a lot more interactive as well. Okay, quite a bit that we have seen so far. And during the course of this discussion, I also had two questions for all of you. I hope everyone remembers what those questions were. Do we? Do we remember the two questions? Homework
Yes.
questions? Okay.
Yes.
Can we recall the two, please?
Difference between ASCII and Unicode,
Mm-hmm.
and
ISO
Why
and
the switch-
Unicode.
ISO and Unicode.
Okay.
Yes.
And
Why the switch from literal entity to decimal entity?
exactly.
And basically.
Exactly, Srinath. Those are the two questions that I would like all of you to try figuring out. I mean, we have a lot of resources, I'm sure, at our disposal, including the likes of Google. So I'd certainly leave it at that. Any questions on what we have discussed today? Anything that you may want me to either reiterate, or is everything just fine?
I have a question.
Yes, Umashankar.
Let's say the very initial concept of rendering engine and scripting engine, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So in case of Chrome,
mm-hmm.
so as we know, V8 is a scripting engine, right?
Correct.
So then what is the name of rendering engine?
See, every browser has a rendering engine. Rendering engine in Chrome and Safari, apparently they are both based on the same code base called WebKit. You may have heard about it.
Right.
WebKit. WebKit provides a rendering engine out of the box. So they are using the rendering engine of WebKit. But
Okay.
scripting engine is different. Chrome uses V8. Safari, for example, uses something called JavaScript Core. That's the name of the script engine. Incidentally, the rendering engine across browsers, we do see a lot of similarity. The scripting engine is where we might see some differences, because that's more, I would rather say, a little programmatic in nature. So more to do with an efficiency, the way things are implemented. That's where there could be some subtle differences.
Okay.
Any other query?
I have one query regarding one syntax that I saw on CSS06 file.
All right, CSS06. Let me just make sure I bring up that file. Okay, this is the one I hope you're referring to.
Yeah, right. So, like in the style tag, the line number 8. So I can see you have written the element name and the class name. So
Mhm.
without any space. So if we like put a space between the element and the class, so then also it will work in the same fashion.
It depends on where the space is. Are you looking at something like this?
Yeah, right.
Okay. There could be a difference in the implication of this. This could mean all elements that use a class called class1 that may be beneath this paragraph in the hierarchy. The implication, the inference could be that also. So preferably, if you are authoring a class for a particular kind of element, you would be better off by ensuring that there would be no additional space, because that could lead to an ambiguity.
Okay.
All right. Any other query? All right. If there are no questions at the moment, I guess we could possibly break for the day. Just about time. I would, as I said before at the very beginning, urge all of you to try revisiting what we have discussed. And of course, certainly, I would like you to try figuring out answers to those two questions that I have put forth during this discussion. And I'll certainly look forward to them the first thing when we meet up next on Thursday. So if everything looks good for now, I suppose we could break for the day. Are we okay with that?
Yeah, sure.
Lakshman, just one more question.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
Umashankar.
As a lab setup, Zainab had asked us to install multiple browsers and IIS as well.
Uh-huh.
So is it really required for further sessions?
Apparently, IIS is something I was looking for because the second conversation that we had, me and Umashankar, I mean, between the two of us, we were also talking
Right.
about some jQuery and all of that.
Right.
That is where I was, looking at IIS. I mean, if you have, certainly could be leveraged, but if that's a hassle, that's okay. I mean, we will try to, look at it. We'll try to see if we can look at it. If you can get IIS installed, that would be wonderful, though.
Actually, to get the IIS in our office machines, we require certain level of approvals.
Oh, okay, okay.
So that's why. Is there any other alternative for that?
Okay.
Did the same thing?
I mean, if you can get it set up, fine. Or I mean, if there is a concern, then maybe what we could do is, I mean, wherever need be, I'll try to see if I can get it up on my machine. But I would prefer if you can at least try and see if we could get IIS on, if not all of our machines, at least a few of us, so we get a hang of it. I mean,
Okay,
worst case
okay.
scenario, I can certainly bring it up. I'll certainly bring up the demos on my machine. I mean, we may have to be content with looking at it working on my machine, but the code is anyway available with you. So as and when you gain access, you can try it out.
Okay. So would it be fine if one of our server have IIS and we can get some?
You could certainly do that. I mean, if you have IIS on one of your servers and you have the privilege to put your code there and get it to work, that's fine. Just that because some of these demos, especially in the context of APIs, I may be using some ASP and ASP.NET related usages. I mean, in the demos. So if you can just ensure that the IIS you are referring to would be, having support for ASP and .NET and all of that, that's fine by me. Umashankar, I hope I was audible. Did I lose you? All right. Was my response audible? Just curious.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Because in this kind of a scenario, there's always this challenge. Every now and then, I need to make sure that though everything looks fine on my machine, suddenly you're gonna have people claiming, oh, well, like we couldn't hear you, we lost you, and things like that. So just want to make sure. Please don't mind. Okay, so if we are good, I suppose we could break for the day. Enjoy your day.